try to pay forward and say, don't let anybody make you second guess yourself. Like, if you know you can do it, go for it. Don't let words damage who you are.
Hello, Susie Long, and welcome to the Yeah But podcast.
Mark, thanks so much for having me today.
So, you're a senior vice president of engagement, organization, and culture.
Yeah.
So, tell me about some of that role and how that plays out with your personality and what you do.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's my dream job. I'm very fortunate in that regard. And I didn't start in HR, so I'm a non-traditional HR person. I started my career in sales many years ago. And as I was going through my career, I realized I love people. I love helping people grow and develop and achieve their aspirations. And it was really important to me to be a developmental leader. So when I fell into HR and just had my midlife crisis, if you will, and decided to change career paths, I really wanted to work on how do I help everyone achieve what they want to achieve in terms of their career aspirations? How do I develop their capability? And so that kind of started my journey, but that's exactly what I have the fortune of doing at Bridgestone. I really work on the fun stuff where we get to help people achieve their goals. We get to build new skill sets. We teach them how to engage with one another. And it's just such a wonderful job because it does so impact how your teammates or employees feel is really what shapes the culture. So it's really, for me, critically important that we have great talent and have great opportunities for people to come and achieve their career aspirations in a large multinational global organization.
And Susie, getting to know you over time, I've learned that you only really say what you believe, right? I've seen you work hard at improving things. And one of the things that I learned early on about you was that you wrote a white paper on succession planning.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I've been with Bridgestone 10 years. And when I joined the organization, we were facing a pretty substantial retirement cliff. And the succession planning process was historically done in terms of you're the next smartest person behind me, so you're going to be my successor. And there was really no thought in terms of, is this person an effective leader? Can they do what's needed to take us to the future? So on and so forth. And I remember my funniest story was we had one individual that was probably on 20 succession slates. And I was just like, God help us if this guy leaves. Like, we are in big trouble. So really building the muscle around how do you build a great succession. So when we have leaders exit the organization, we do our due diligence to try to understand, is this a like for like? Is this something that we need to look different at this point? So we've really created this whole methodology around agile succession planning to adapt as the business adapts, and knock on wood, it's worked out really well for us. We have a really great internal fill rate. Sometimes we would find ourselves in a situation where we would offer someone this amazing role and they're like, this is not really what I want. And so really ensuring that we understand what our employees, what their aspirations are, and do they align with what we are planning for them? The people are going to learn things in roles. So are they ready enough to where they can jump in and be successful? So we really kind of got rid of the language around ready now. And we said, yeah, they're ready enough, and let's take the chance on them. And that opened up the possibilities around succession planning as well.
That's great because I can imagine there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of people have to be involved. This wasn't a hey, let's just try this kind of move at a global organization that has a lot of structure and a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
So you must be tenacious. So and ability to convince at least other people that hey, this might be worth trying to even do. So that brings me to some of your yeah buts because I hear what you've accomplished, I hear what you've done, but I also hear you have some yeah buts. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
hear this yeah, but you can't where I'm from. So tell me more about what that means.
I was born overseas. I'm Jordanian and Lebanese. And so my mom brought me to the US when I was very young. And growing up in a Middle Eastern home, I was raised by my grandmother, my mother, and my aunts, and three very strong women. But women are seen very differently. And so there were a lot of questions like, can I go to college? I had a very humble upbringing, and it was not always easy for my mom when she came to the US. And so she actually left when I was 16. So here I am, 16 years old, pretty much on my own with my grandmother trying to find my way. And I always wondered, like, can I do this? Can I achieve what I want to achieve in life, given my background, and am I going to have the opportunities that I hope I can have? There are a lot of things that just self doubt, and I joke, but growing up in a Middle Eastern home, you never get the that's great. Yeah, why can't you do more? And so there's that natural insecurity that's built into you because of the way you're raised, and it comes from a good place. But you bring home a report card with straight A's, and they're like, "Well, why aren't they A pluses?" And I'm like, "Oh man, like straight." There's a lot of humor around that growing up in a Middle Eastern home. So you do wonder, you're like, am I good enough? Can I achieve it? Yeah, but do I have the ability to do this? So
Mhm.
I think that's where it really originates from.
And you did mention to me about other people in your family had chosen more traditional career paths. Talk a little bit more about what was expected for you to do, and when you said you weren't, how the reaction was.
Yeah, it was a defining moment in my life for sure. So my uncles were for the most part mostly engineers. They all came to the U.S. and got degrees in engineering and really prestigious, amazing jobs. And I was just like, I want to be an English major. One uncle specifically saying, "What in the bleep are you going to do with that?" And I was just like, "Well, I really don't know, but it sounds amazing." And I loved philosophy at the time, and really just didn't know what ultimately where my path would go. But again, very similar. All of these traditional engineers that are very scientific and very they have their paths laid out, and that was the expectation, and I was like, "Yeah, I definitely don't wanna do that." Like, have you ever seen me try to solve a math problem? It's a nightmare. Like, no, that's definitely not yeah, that was another and I was like, "Alright, well, can I actually make money doing this?" And, it has kind of all worked out.
Yeah, Susie, this is interesting because a lot of people face discrimination or externally from other people. But what I'm hearing is that you had it kind of an expectation internally from your family and other people. How much is that harder to overcome because these are people closer to you versus some stranger saying, I don't think it's because of where you came from?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, honestly. I think it's harder to get over because the external factors, there's some of that too, for sure. But externally, you can just say, you know what, that's not so close. It's not so intimate. But when it's your own family, it is a little bit harder because you're like, well, I don't want to let them down. I don't want them to be disappointed. There's that internal struggle of am I doing the right thing? Am I living up to their expectations instead of am I living up to my expectations? So there's that all that mental stuff that kind of comes along with it and the family loyalty and the importance of not wanting to let people down. And I am the ultimate people pleaser. So, not wanting to disappoint anyone and making sure that they felt good about my choices and my decisions. And so it's hard to get stuck. You do get stuck and it gets in your head and it does impact your ability to sometimes move forward. And so you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just say, you know what, I'm gonna stay the course. I'm gonna do this. This is the right thing to do. And yeah, you have to work through it, but it's not easy.
Hey there, it's time for a quick break. While we're diving into how to live, learn, and lead better, I wanted to let you in on something I'm really excited about. If you've ever found yourself stuck in the yeah, but cycle, those moments where excuses get in your way of your potential, my new book, Yeah, But Cut Through the Noise to Live, Learn, and Lead Better, is for you. The book is packed with practical strategies, real stories, and actionable advice to help you stop making excuses and start making progress. Whether you're a leader, a learner, or just someone looking to cut through the noise, Yeah But has something for you. And here's the best part. For a limited time, you can grab a chapter for free. Just head over to my website at www.markawolf.com/book to get started. Readers have already said that the perspective and stories guided them to get unstuck and move forward. All right, let's get back to the show and dive into more ways to break through those yeah but moments. And another thing about this is that you talked about being in Middle Eastern culture, but how about being a woman overall? Not just from where you're from, but how has that affected your journey and your career and overcoming yeah buts?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was in retail, it was a little bit easier because retail is predominantly female, but I was on the sales side. And even on the sales side, it was predominantly male. So you always had to really fight for your position. I remember when I joined, Cold Vision was the original company that I joined in the optical industry, and it was purchased by Luxottica. But I remember my onboarding experience was with the highest performing regional director, and he was number one year over year over year. And I remember with him challenging me, and I told him, I said, "I'm gonna beat you, and I'm gonna be number 1 next year." And he was like, "No way. There's just no way." And just, having somebody that's supposed to be helping you and training you and getting you ready say, "No way it's gonna happen." And his challenge to me, he was from Philly. He was like, "If you can eat that whole Philly cheesesteak, then I know you're somebody to be contended with." And I can. I ate that whole Philly cheesesteak. And I was number 1 that next year, and because I just don't wanna be defeated, and whether it's competitiveness but having grown up in a traditional Middle Eastern home, you don't necessarily as a woman, and then you come into a male-dominant industry, and Bridgestone is even more so, and you have to find ways to make your voice heard. You have to make if you don't have it within you, you can really get crushed easily, and I think that's something that and you have to have a good network around you to support you as well, and I think that's what I've learned is you've gotta have inner strength, but you've also gotta have a network around you because there were times, honestly, at Bridgestone where I was like, "I don't know if I can do this," quite honestly, because there was such, male competitiveness, and as a woman, it felt like you had to fight twice as hard for your position, and that there were some not so easy days when you were trying just trying to hold your own, quite honestly, and there were times where I left meetings in tears because I was just, like, so disseminated, but then you come back and do it again, and you just learn and you get stronger, and for me as a woman in this industry, I believe in lifting up other women, and the worst thing that can happen is if a woman doesn't help another woman, in my opinion, and so really made it a commitment to help other women find their way and find their voice, and not always easy.
That's great to hear, and as a male who's a girl dad, right, I've become an ally for women understanding more about their plight, but what I'm hearing from you is that there's some women that don't help other women, which is unfortunate. When somebody goes first, bring others along, be able to have that conversation. You understand their plight, and even if you didn't live their life, you still know the difficulty it is trying to get those positions
Yeah.
and be able to stand up and not fold under the pressure. And what I'm hearing from you is that there still is pressure, just like any other job, but it's also going to be more difficult just because you're a female in an environment where you're one of the few.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, and we've come a long way, but just even the way the descriptions around sitting in talent reviews, at times we'll hear, "She's got sharp elbows." But if it's a man, it's perceived as he's really strong and very capable, like he gets stuff done, and it's like, "Oh, now come on now." So we've moved past a lot of that, which is really great, and we really have focused extensively on women in leadership and made huge strides, which has been wonderful, and now it's nice. You have a community and you can really rally together, and I think we also have great leaders that believe in the value that diversity brings, but, nothing like the automotive industry or the industry.
Yeah, it's a traditional industry. I talk about in the book not reinventing the wheel, and actually I talk about how if we didn't reinvent the wheel, where we would be, we would still be on, early on we would be on rocks or we'd be
Right.
on
Right.
literally exactly wood with leather on the outside because that's what we use. So you have background regarding that. You've seen how the wheel has evolved, and you're happy that there's a future of the wheel, right?
So it's really cool technology. But yeah, absolutely. There's a huge evolution there for sure.
And there's still more to go. And it's one of the other things you mentioned was, yeah, yeah, but I'm not sure I can do it. And you kind of touched on it, but tell us more about what you couldn't do and what made you believe you could not do it.
Yeah, this is one where it's a vivid point in my career, and it happened probably about 8 years ago. I had someone who was an advocate for me to grow and to achieve my aspirations, and that advocate turned into a foe, if you will. Because once I became a peer, the tables turned a little bit. And that was a really tough time because there was a just this pivot in terms of you advocated for me to get here. Now I'm here. Now you're just, cutting me down at the knees constantly. And it was a very tenuous situation because I was still trying to find my way as a leader and just finally had a seat at the leadership table and felt that I had earned the right to be there. But this person who was my advocate didn't necessarily help advocate as I transitioned into that leadership position because now I became a threat. And that was a really difficult time because I felt that all those insecurities bubbled up, and then imposter syndrome is a real thing, as everyone knows. And you start to second guess yourself, and your own self confidence starts to erode, and you start to wonder, can I really do this? Am I good enough to achieve what I need to achieve? And that was a really, I think, a darker time in terms of I didn't know how to get through it. And I was just like, am I capable of achieving this? And so some of that just really it chips away at your core. And coming out of that was quite the challenge. But then when I came out on the other side, I was just like, why did I ever second guess myself? Like, why did I let someone get to me that way? I'm clearly here for a reason. Why did I let those jabs and those comments just erode my self worth and my self confidence? And so working through that was just really challenging, but I think I came out better for it, honestly. And I learned so much. And it's something that I try to pay forward and say, don't let anybody make you second guess yourself. Like if you know you can do it, go for it. Like don't let words damage who you are.
And that's great advice. And I think people are like, they want to believe they can. But I heard a few things you said. It's like, I was young, I was still establishing myself as a leader. Somebody who brought me in and helped me turned on me, which is even worse, right? Because you expect competition from others
Right.
that you're trying to beat, but the one that brings you in. So, as you kind of work through this, what advice do you have for people and maybe steps they need to take to kind of shortcut that and maybe even avoid it?
Yeah, I think what helped me get through it, and I would recommend this for anyone, quite honestly. And I think you'll appreciate what I'm going to say, Mark, because this is in your space as well. But I got a coach. I reached out and got myself an executive coach because I was just like, number one, I'm transitioning from a more junior leadership role to a more senior leadership role, and how do I do that? What does that look like? Then how do I build my self-confidence to the place where I don't have imposter syndrome? Am I gonna know everything? Absolutely not, but how do I work through it? And, that coach was instrumental in helping me, and also really helping me, compartmentalize where things were coming from. And he had a joke with me because I was like, this person is so destructive. Like when I come home from work, that's all I talk about to my husband. And I remember my husband saying, this guy comes home with you every day, like you're talking about him constantly. And I remember he was just like, leave him at the door, like you don't bring him home. And it was one of those things where just it was such liberating advice, and it was just like, all right, put things in context of where things are coming from, why they're being said, so on and so forth. And then really reestablishing my self-worth and my capability and just helping me through that. And I would do that 10,000 times over. I wish I would have done it sooner, quite honestly. And so that's something that really helped me tremendously. And then just having a good support system around you too, in terms of friends, family that are like, yeah, that guy's a jerk. Don't take his butt.
Well,
Um,
there's always that, right? But it's interesting you mentioned about the coach, but did you know coaching existed? Did you see it? Did the company offer it and say, hey, this is it? But how did you get to that point?
Yeah, I was fortunate, obviously being in HR, that executive coaching exists, but I had never used one personally. But I was like, just in that place where I was like, I don't think I can dig myself out of this. I need professional help. The company does offer it, but this was one that I felt it was a little bit of both life coaching and career coaching. So I was like, you know what, this is an investment in me. I'm going to do this. And I enlisted the coach on my own and worked with the coach for a good year and really came out quite much better than going into the situation, and really realized even some of the things that I was doing that was contributing to this victimization. And so it really shape shifted my thinking in terms of, why am I doing this to myself? And at the end of the day, you don't realize how you can spiral so quickly to where, because you start to, somebody doubts you, then you start to doubt yourself. Then it's like you become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So much of that we worked through, and it was wonderful. And again, and I periodically tap on that individual too. I'm not ashamed to say I have a coach now, and there's always, I think, for anybody to think that they've arrived in terms of, "I've got this, I know it, I'm developed." It's such a shame, because you're always learning, you're always evolving, you're always growing, and having people help you with that, I think, is wonderful.
And you mentioned it multiple ways, having a support system of people around you, and then listening to your own advice to be like, is this really true what people are saying, or is this just what I've impacted on myself? Who
Right.
gives this person the right to come home with me with head trash that is, and then to go and get outside perspective, a coach, a mentor, different people play different roles. We speak about that a lot in the book, because a lot of yeah buts are based on people, their own thoughts, right?
Yeah.
So it's well, I've never done this before. Well, yes, the first time you become a leader, you might not have done that before. So how do you overcome that?
Mhm.
And getting that perspective, but also understanding your strengths and weaknesses and what type of boss you're going to be. Like, working for you, Susie, people are going to be like, she's easy to talk to. But even at your own organization, they're good leaders, but they're not the warm and fuzzy, give you a kind of a virtual hug kind of feel, but they still can be great leaders. You just have to
Mm.
know your leadership style, know who you're working with, and also know it's probably not about you that the leader is like that.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's so true. And it's really interesting because we have one leader that I respect tremendously, and he's intense, but he comes from such a good place. Like, if you can get past the intensity and understand the intent, you realize that this person genuinely cares about people. And he cares about his team. He cares about the business. It's just his approach is different.
So imagine we asked him, and I had him on the podcast, and we asked him that question and said, what do you wish people knew about you sooner? Imagine if he could say, I'm actually really intense, and I know I come across intense, but I really care. I just had a conversation with somebody recently, and I asked that question, and they said, I wish people knew that my face is not a face of not disinterest. I'm just thinking. So it looks like I'm not actually interested, but I'm actually processing the information I get. I was like, that's brilliant, because now I know what I thought was this person didn't like what was said because you watch body language. They're actually just processing different. But if you didn't know that, you'd be like, that person's a jerk. Like,
Right.
well, I can't believe that they're like, did you see that face?
Exactly.
So it brings me to another yeah, but you had. You said, what if I fail? So, okay. What if you fail? What was that a yeah, but about? Thank you for listening to the Yeah But podcast. If today's episode provided valuable perspective on how to overcome the excuses that can hold you back, let us know in the comments. Remember, it's not about the yeah buts. It's about finding ways to live, learn, and lead better every day. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little kick to get past their yeah buts. And don't forget to follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And for even more tips, connect with me at marcawolf.com/podcast or on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep challenging those excuses and keep moving forward.